Welcome to South Shropshire, houseman's land of lost content. Tucked away in the south-western corner of the county, it is certainly a land of great charm and beauty. Sleepy hamlets clustered beneath the watchful eye of lofty church spires, deserted country lanes with only the occasional cyclist or horse rider. So old market towns with beautiful black and white buildings. This is still the South Shropshire of the 21st century. But there's more to this area than the sleepy facade would have us believe. The observant visitor will notice the telltale reminders of a violent past. Ancient hill forts, Roman camps and medieval castles, they all bear testimony to more troubled times. Now add to this the odd myth, legend and ghost story, and we have a fascinating place just waiting to be discovered. We begin our tour at Cleobury Mortimer in the southeast of the district. Taking a circular route, we end our journey at Ludlow, South Shropshire's jewel in the crown. Cleobury Mortimer takes its name from the infamous Mortimer family, powerful Marcher lords. The most noted was Roger de Mortimer, lover to Queen Isabella, wife of Edward II. It was Mortimer who had the king murdered at Berkeley Castle in Gloucestershire. The crooked spire of St Mary's Church is second only to that of Chesterfield. Cleobury has a strong claim to be the birthplace of William Langland, the 14th century poet, who wrote The Visions of Piers Plowman. A window in the church depicts his portrayal of medieval life. One mile east of the town is Morley Hall, former home to the famous Blount family. Like the Mortimers, the Blounts would attain notoriety through an illicit relationship with royalty. Bessie Blount was lover to Henry VIII and bore him a son entitled the Duke of Richmond. On the 5th of January 1813, Napoleon Bonaparte's nephew was christened in the chapel attached to the hall. At that time, Napoleon's brother Lucien was being held under house arrest at Dinham House, Ludlow. 8 miles west of Cleobury Mortimer stands the impressive Titterstone Clee, which boasts one of the finest views in England. Clee Hill village grew up as a major site for stone quarrying and coal mining. This, together with civil air installations, has left the summit of Titterstone badly blighted. This rocky outcrop is known locally as the Giant's Chair. From here, a legendary giant supposedly fired an arrow through a window in Ludlow Castle. Tales of giants are commonplace, but not everyone dismisses them lightly. There are those hereabouts who claim to have been terrified by a tall man dressed in black stalking the hill. Just 1 mile south of Clee Hill is Hope Bagot. It takes its name from the Celtic word hop, meaning valley, and Bagot, the name of the local lords of the manor. The church of St John the Baptist is Norman, with possibly some traces of Saxon stonework. This holy well dates back to Roman times and was said to have the power to restore lost eyesight. Legend has it that a monastery once existed in a small valley just north of the church. No evidence remains of this now, but on a quiet summer's evening it is claimed the sound of monastery bells can still be heard. A few miles south of Clee Hill on the Hereford and Worcestershire borders is Burford, where we find evidence of a real giant. On the north wall of St Mary's Church is this large triptych dedicated to the memory of Richard Cornwall, who died in 1568. Richard is said to have stood a mighty 7 feet 3 inches tall. Judging by his walking stick, this was no exaggeration. The church has fine monuments to the Cornwall family. This alabaster figure is of Princess Elizabeth, daughter of John of Gaunt. Restored by the late John Treasure, Burford House is now home to the National Clematis Collection. Just 3 miles north of Ludlow is the Church of St Mary's at Bromfield. Dating back to the 12th century, it was once part of a Benedictine priory. After the dissolution, the church was converted to a private dwelling, but following a major fire, it was restored to religious duties. The chancel ceiling was painted in the 17th century by Thomas Francis. It has been described as one of the best examples of the worst styles of ecclesiastic art. This stone tablet commemorates Henry Hickman, a pioneer of anaesthesia, who was born in a nearby farmhouse. His colleagues dismissed him as a crank, but later work confirmed many of his ideas. Lonely Hopton Castle steadfastly guards its Civil War secret. Besieged for 3 weeks by Royalist forces, the parliamentarians finally surrendered on quarter for their lives. Sadly, the Cavaliers reneged on their word and slaughtered everyone, except for the governor. The Royalists argued that earlier refusals of the courtesy cancelled all obligations under the rules of war. From that time on, however, Hopton Quarter would become a byword for deadly treachery. Each year on the last Sunday in May, this poplar tree at Acton is adorned with colourful flags and bunting. The modern ceremony dates back to the 18th century, though it almost certainly has its roots in ancient fertility rites. A local bride was so pleased with the decorations on her wedding day, she asked her new family for a bequest of money to maintain the tradition. Clunton, Clunbury, Clungunford and Clun are the quietest places under the sun. Apart from school closing time, very little has changed since Houseman penned these immortal words. The name Clun is derived from the Celtic Llan, which means sacred place or church. According to local tradition, those that cross the 15th century Clun Bridge come back wiser than they went. Clun Castle has burned down and been rebuilt several times during the course of its history. It is believed to be the Garde de la Ruse of Sir Walter Scott's novel The Betrothed. Scott himself is thought to have stayed at the Buffalo Inn whilst writing this book. The town has impressive literary connections. E.M. Forster visited here and used it as the basis for Oniton in Howard's End. Also, the playwright John Osborne lived out his later years at Clun. His body lies in the local churchyard. St Mary's Church at Boycie is situated close to the Welsh border. The name translates as the Prayer House of the Fleeces. Buried in the churchyard is the body of a pedlar who died in the 17th century. William Cantlin had been travelling an old coach road through the Clun Forest when he was robbed and killed. A dispute over which parish should bury the old man was later recalled, gaining hundreds of acres for Boycie during the Enclosure Acts. Beriah Botfield, MP for Ludlow, later erected a cross at the site of the pedlar's demise. Hidden away in the hills near to Offa's Dyke is the reclusive church at Maidstone. The place takes its name from the Welsh word maen, or stone. Legend has it that when the church was being built, the stone would mysteriously reposition itself close to the dyke. Eventually, the villagers had to abandon their chosen site near the village and build it here. The 168-mile dyke was built in the 9th century by King Offa of Mercia to partition his land from that of the Welsh. The town of Bishop's Castle was given to the Bishop of Hereford by the Saxon lord Egwin Shakehead. Egwin made the bequest after being cured of the palsy at Hereford Cathedral. During the Middle Ages, the parish was partly in England and partly in Wales, and was much fought over. The castle would have stood close to the site presently occupied by the Castle Hotel. At one point in its history, Bishop's Castle had the distinction of being the smallest borough in England. A classic rotten borough, it once managed to send 4 MPs to Parliament. All 4 candidates somehow conspired to poll 87 votes each. The 18th century town hall has 2 circular windows in its basements. For many years, it served as the town lockup. This fine old Elizabethan building is known as the House on Crutches. It now houses the town museum. The Church of Holy Trinity at Priest Weston is home to some rather unusual bench ends. Carved by the Reverend Brewster in the 19th century, they are said to have been modelled on his parishioners. On this stone column, Brewster carved the legend of Mitchell's Fold, a nearby Bronze Age stone circle. The legend tells of a cow given to the villagers during a time of drought. Providing each wife drew only 1 pail of milk a day, the cow would never run dry. But a wicked witch milked the cow dry into a sieve, and it died of exhaustion. In revenge, the fairy turned the witch into stone. The villagers then surrounded her with more stones to prevent her escaping. At the very heart of the Shropshire Hills are the wild and windswept Stiper Stones. Once an important lead mining area, they are now at the centre of folklore and legend. Wild Edric, a Saxon opponent of Norman tyranny, is said to be imprisoned in the lead mines beneath the hill. He and his men are sometimes heard trying frantically to escape. And when Edric and his fairy wife Godda are seen riding over the hilltops, it is believed to be an omen of forthcoming war. Here on the Devil's Chair, Beelzebub reputedly sits, surveying his kingdom. Some say the rocks were dropped accidentally from the Devil's apron. Others say he deliberately drops them to sink into the sea a land he despises above all others. When the chair is surrounded in mist, then beware, for there is much mischief about. Or so local folklore would have us believe. The Lord's Hill Baptist Church at Snail Beach was used as a setting for the film Gone to Earth. Based on Mary Webb's novel, it portrays Shropshire Hill life in the early part of the last century. Rattling Hope, known locally as Ratchup, is the site of another fantastic Shropshire legend. On moonlit nights, a phantom funeral cortege has been seen to pass through the village. With black-plumed horses and top-hatted bearers, the ghostly apparition glides silently over the bridge. Slowly, it then climbs the hill and disappears from view. Locals wryly suggest that a drop of strong ale will improve the odds of seeing this spectacle. The Long Mynd is one of South Shropshire's favourite beauty spots. In the summer, it is a friendly, welcoming place. But in winter, it can be wild and unforgiving. One winter's evening in 1865, the Reverend Carr from Wolsterston Rectory lost his way in a terrible snowstorm. Missing for 24 hours, he claimed that it was only the mysterious sound of children's voices which guided him to safety. Situated on the eastern slopes of the Long Mynd is the attractive town of Stretton. The Victorians created a spa town here and marketed the area as Little Switzerland. Today, it's very popular with tourists and hikers. The Cruciform Church of St. Lawrence has a rare Sheila na gig above the north doorway. This memorial window is dedicated to Heber Stretton, a Victorian novelist whose book Jessica's Prayer was a worldwide bestseller. An ironical epitaph to Anne Cook reads, "On a Thursday she was born, on a Thursday made a bride, on a Thursday her leg was broke, and on a Thursday she died." All Stretton is somewhat fancifully believed to have received its name from royalty. En route from Ludlow to Shrewsbury, James II had already been told the two previous villages were called Stretton. On hearing that this one was also called Stretton, he declared, "It's all Stretton here." Acton Scott Museum is a working farm which demonstrates daily life before mechanisation. There are regular displays of traditional crafts, including blacksmithing and butter making. The 16th century Acton Hall belonged to the Acton family, who could trace their ancestors back to Saxon times. In the 19th century, Sir John Acton became Prime Minister of Naples, before being forced into exile with the Neapolitan royal family. At the time of the conquest, Rushbury was already a prosperous Saxon settlement. Evidence of its Saxon origins can be seen in the herringbone masonry of St. Peter's Church. An old tradition, which sadly has now died out, used to take place here on Shrove Tuesday. The children of the village would join hands and walk in a circle with their backs to the building. This was known as clipping the church. Local tradition holds that nearby Roman Bank was the site of Bravarium, a settlement on the road from Magna to Wroxeter. Overlooked by Wenlock Edge, Wilderhope Manor is now managed by the National Trust. Built in the 16th century, it contains an original spiral staircase and a fine plastered ceiling. Wenlock Edge is a geological feature of international renown and is home to a wide variety of flora and fauna. The Elizabethan Shipton Hall was given as a wedding present by Thomas Lutwich to his daughter Elizabeth. It has an impressive 4-storied porch tower and star-shaped chimney stacks. The restored 13th century dovecote would have required a royal charter when it was built. It is said that a tunnel ran from Shipton Hall to nearby Larden Hall and came up in front of the main fireplace. Larden Hall was sold off brick by brick to Disneyland in the 1960s. Inside Shipton Church is a memorial plaque to Jasper, Mary, Richard and Eleanor Moore, who sailed to New England on the Mayflower. High on the slopes of the brown Clee Hill, Acton Church stands alone like a jilted bride. At least twice in its history it has been deserted. Once in the Middle Ages and again in the 17th century. A community of